stand beside me. We're better as a unit. Ain't enough bullets in a gun to hit us all.
Hey, so what's up, everybody? Back here for another episode of Code Switch. It's your boy Trevor Evans. Here with my boy, I call him Hollywood, but Emmanuel Buckley. His colleagues also call him EB for short.
So good people.
Yeah. So before we kind of go into the episode today, Hollywood, do we maybe want to give a brief intro of ourselves again for the folks who maybe haven't seen the first episode?
Yeah. So welcome team, good people. I am Emmanuel Buckley. I am a software engineering manager. I've been doing this I've been in the industry for about over a decade now. But yeah, I manage a few teams, a few people, have experience being a team lead and just coming up in the industry, as a junior, not knowing anything, just very ambitious to really get ahead and start learning things to turn it into more of a mentor and leader at work and in this field.
Awesome. Appreciate that, man. So I'll go into kind of my background a little bit. Trevor Evans. I also work in the software engineering field. Currently I'm in an IC role, but I have been in management in the past, similar to Hollywood. Hollywood is my mentor, whether he likes to admit it or not. He loves to give me a lot of credit, but he definitely helped me get to where I am today. So about a decade of experience under my belt in full stack development. Currently doing more front end at this time, but I also still dabble in the back end and also kind of looking to get back into the leadership realm here in the near future. So yeah, let's just go ahead and jump into our episode for today. So the topic for today is failure ain't final, lessons from projects that didn't make it. So to all of my tech people out there, I'm pretty sure you are familiar with various projects, various technologies that you've probably dabbled in on the side apart from your 9 to 5. I'm sure you've probably had some real dope ideas of, I have this idea for this project. Maybe you put together a team, maybe you got with a friend, maybe it was something very serious, maybe someone came to you with an idea for a project and you worked through it. And as we all experience, sometimes they fall through, they don't work out the way that you plan. And so we want to kind of go into that a little bit on this episode and talk about, what are some projects that we have failed at? What are some things we could have done differently, things we could have done better, and just reflecting on that, But before we jump into that, what I want to do is kind of take a step back and take it to my roots, which is the Bible. I'm real big on God, real big on Christianity. So I love to kind of just set the foundation. So I found a scripture here, Hollywood, Proverbs 24th chapter, 1st through the 16th verse. Now, I'm not going to read through all of that. I'm not going to take y'all through a morning sermon here, but it talks about wisdom.
Sure, let me know if let me know if I need to stand up, man, when you're reading. So.
Hey, you got it. If you need a little bit more time, let me know.
If you with me, say amen.
So basically it just talks about wisdom, knowledge, and trying to stay away from evildoers and foolishness. But how this kind of pertains to failure, in my opinion, there were a few verses in here that really spoke to me. Specifically verse 10. So I'll read that. It says, if thou faint in the day of adversity, thy strength is small. And then verse 16, for a just man falleth 7 times and riseth up again, but the wicked shall fall into mischief. So that really spoke to me and just said, when you're working through projects, even outside of projects, just in life, as you're working through things, you're going to have to persevere. There are going to be times where you're dealing with challenges, where you're dealing with adversities, and you have to know how to get back up, brush the dust off, and keep it pushing, And Proverbs is just a real good book for uplifting inspiration. So I encourage all of y'all, go check that out. Proverbs 24th chapter, 1st through the 16th verse. We learn a lot through failure, right? especially within our community. And failure disproportionately affects people without access to resources or strong networks. So the reason I say that, Hollywood, is I feel like within our community, we we're in a place where I've even seen it in my hometown where if someone messes up, like I'm gonna give you a good example. I knew a lot of people from my high school that uh, either they, you know, messed up, went to jail, or maybe they got pregnant, had a kid, and it's over for them. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of people I know from my hometown had kids and they never made it out. They were never able to go to college. They were never able to get like a stable trade. And since then, like I feel like I've been able to go on and do all of these great things, you know, doing well for myself. But I look back and it's like, wow, yeah, like sure they had a kid and I understand, right? Like that's a big deal. But it's not like I wasn't out here, you know, talking to girls and doing all those things, you know. And I'm pretty sure people from other communities with more privilege are doing the same things at those ages, but they're able to bounce back because of that privilege, because of maybe what their family has and the resources that they have around them. So they can make those mistakes and still go on to be very successful. But I feel like within our community, it's like, oh man, you done had a baby, it's over with, you know? And then from that point on, you're basically in your hometown. You're just trying your best to find those opportunities and move up within your community, but there's already not a lot of resources in that community. So that's one thing that I think about as far as failure and how it pertains to our community. I feel like we really have this marginalized line that we have to walk because the moment we mess up, it's disastrous for us.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I would say this. You mentioned something, privilege, right? And I would say privilege is disproportionately proportioned within across communities, right? So there are
Yes.
privileged people across all communities, obviously, right? It's just that some communities have a
Yeah.
lot more of it than we do. And so when you talk about the hey, it affects us more, is because, or part of the reason is because that, like you and me, to a certain extent, we have privileged lives. You really think about it, and you go back to the Bible, right? Like a lot of people pray for us, man. We had a lot of people who had strong
True.
foundation and strong roots in the church.
True.
We had a lot of
True.
people around us like that would knock us on top of our head, right? Hey, no, that's not the right thing to do. So even though
Yeah.
we may experience those things, that we've had that support system where other people, unfortunately, have not. I have never had a child. I don't have any kids, but I can only imagine just having a child at such a young age and then having to go back home, or maybe not even having a home to go back to with no
Yeah.
support. And so now you're like your only job and your only task is to keep this child alive and healthy and moving on to the next
Yeah.
phase in life. It is unfortunate within our community, man. Um, I hope that
It's tough, man.
yeah, it is. I hope that we get to a place where we start looking at people as resources versus opportunities. I do, kind of touch on the last episode. I do think that's very prevalent in our community, right? And even with,
Yeah.
like, when I say opportunities, not even trying to make money off of them, but one thing that a lot of young people, I will say, I'll frame it that way, they like a bunch of foolishness. If you think
Yeah. Yeah.
about our roles in life and our normal position as Black people in life, we're typically either athletes or we're entertainers, and not
That's a
everybody
good point.
are going to be athletes, right? So it's easy to be entertainers. It's easy to go onto social media and act a fool, right, and have people laugh at you,
That's a
get your
good point.
views, or laugh at other people, right? So it's unfortunate,
Point.
man.
Yeah, so that brings forth kind of a question in my mind. How do you convince the younger generation from our community that you don't have to go that route? Because I'll be honest with you, when I was in high school, I'll be honest with you, man. I was looking at all the athletes on TV. I was looking at the rappers. I was looking at the producers, and I was like, man, that would be fun, you know. Didn't even know like in 10th, 11th grade I would go on to be like in the engineering community so heavily, right? But here we are, you know what I'm saying? And it truly has been a blessing, you know, but how do you how do you convince the younger generation to say, hey man, like there's another way?
That's a good question. I don't think I had an answer. I would say this, and you break up another good point, right? I think I could almost bet my bank account that most of us have dropped at least one verse in our younger years, right? At least,
100%.
at least one rap. We done came up with at least one, right? Just trying to find a way to make it out.
Facts.
But I think my philosophy has changed to I have to focus on the people who want to make it out, right? Focus on the people who have that desire to just really get ahead and just don't have the opportunities to do so.
Yeah.
Because you can talk to everybody, and I don't think we should not talk to everybody. Just to be very clear, I think we should talk to everybody and pour into everybody. But the focus should really be on those who really, really, really are trying and just haven't, found their way out. I think in a lot of cases in just a life in general across all cultures and things like that, we tend to focus on the people who don't really want anything extra in life. So, well, those are our examples of why we don't do the certain things that we do in life. Kind of going back to church, right? You have a lot of people say, "Well, I don't go to church because that's how church people act." Well, you're focused on the wrong people. First off, you shouldn't be focused on the people at all, right? But in that church, you should be focused on the people who are actually doing what they say that they do and living life or trying to live life how they should be living it, versus you focus on the maybe the minority, maybe the majority of people, but regardless, you're focusing on people who, in the grand scheme of things, don't really live how they talk.
Yeah, I like what you said about focusing on the people that want to get out, right? There's bringing it back to the Bible here. There's that, I believe there's like a scripture that's, I don't remember it verbatim, but it says something along the lines of when you're trying to reach people and share the gospel with them and tell them about Christ and God and all those things, it talks about how you're going to get pushback. You're going to get people that don't want to hear it, but I believe it says shake the dust off of your feet, something like that, but basically it speaks to, move on, like you just said, it's not that you don't share it with everyone, but you don't get hung up on the people that aren't receiving it, and you move forward with the ones that are willing to receive it. So really like what you said there, man. Really like what you said there. So went off script a little bit, but that was a good conversation. So another point I have here about how failure disproportionately affects people, particularly from our community, is our expectations implicitly higher because of who we are and who might not want us to be in higher places or higher positions. What are your thoughts on that?
The expectation is higher. I would.
Yeah.
I have to agree. I have to agree. And I'll frame it this way, right? We have a lot of friends who aren't necessarily Christians. Just bringing it back to the Bible again, who are not Christian, right?
Yep.
Still friends, still cool, very very close friends too.
Right.
Man, and I'll bring it up to bring them up, but I bring it up to say that the way that people view Christians is that they hold us to a very high standard. They hold us to perfection. True. If you really think about it, they hold us to perfection. Remember, to be Christians, to be Christ-like. Christ is perfect, and so you're holding us to that we'll never achieve. So bringing it back to something I said in the last episode, which was that I feel like I represent all Black people as far as my behavior and things like that. I don't think other communities, this is how I feel, I don't think other communities have that same expectation of themselves. And so the expectation is higher. You need to hold yourself in a higher esteem or to a higher standard than what other people may or may not require. You're already not in a lot of places. And so you can't falter, because if you do, the chances of another person that looks like you getting into that place may not be as likely in the future. And so I don't think other communities have that same standard of them. And just to be clear, nobody has ever said this to me, right? It's just a feeling. It's just from experience, from what I've seen. And so I'm not saying that, hey, this is law, this is the true standard of us, but just from historical purposes.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like, right? Like certain people didn't have to prove themselves to be here, to say, hey, we need the right to vote. We need the right to be able to have quality education, go to the same schools with the same standards, be able to use the same bathrooms, et cetera, et cetera. And people act like this is a long time ago. This is not a long time ago. My grandma grew up during these times, right? So I do think that that standard does permutate across all our community to some extent.
100%, man. And you talk about it not being long ago. That's facts, because my parents that are boomers, like they actually, like when segregation ended while they were like in school. You know what I'm saying? So like they literally, yeah, wow, yeah. So they literally witnessed, being kids and being in a segregated environment, and then, as they're growing, it's like, whoa, everything changed. Now you're integrated, and I feel like we sweep that under the rug a lot, right? Like, especially depending on who you talk to, you're in these conversations and they try to throw it back like, oh, well, that was so long ago, that wasn't me. That's not how I feel. That's not how I think. And I'm like, well, I'm not saying you think that way, but I'm just saying we need to have the conversation, right? Because these things are still very much prevalent. And I mean, these things are not things that are going to change overnight. And if they just happened, we still have to do the work to continue diluting that, right?
Yep. Context matters. That's what people don't understand. Context matters.
Facts. One thing I literally, this popped in my brain as you were talking. But I'll never forget back when we were at RSI, bro. And I was on limbs. You remember Don? Oh, I know. Limbs was wild, right? Okay, all right. So I guess we need to probably maybe pause here, give the watchers what limbs stands for Laboratory Information Management System. And I'll never forget, bro. I was in Dothan. For those that don't know, I'm from Dothan, Alabama. And I was in Dothan. I had graduated, just trying to apply for jobs, trying to find something. And came across this opportunity for an associate programmer analyst at a company called Rural Sourcing Inc., RSI. And I applied. They hit me up. I do the interview. And they're like, we're gonna bring you in. And for the first 6 months, we want you to be working on something called LIMS. And they were like, after that, we're going to move you on to something either Java or .NET, but we're going to get you into something that you're probably a little more familiar with, but we're going to teach you this new programming language. So they called it a programming language, right? Then I get there. It's not a programming language at all. It's a system. It's a system that allows for data entry and configuration management. That was pretty much it. You can do some SQL. You could do like some Visual Basic. But it in and of itself, it was not a programming language. It wasn't like a framework or anything like that. And so, and I ended up staying on there longer than 6 months. So I was very upset about that. And Hollywood will tell y'all, I had a couple blowouts while I was at RSI behind that.
No, it's called crashing out now, man. It's called crashing out.
Yeah, I crashed out a good couple times, but I don't know if you remember Robbie Yant, Hollywood. Robbie. Okay, man, Yant.
Oh,
Yant
redhead Robbie. Oh yeah, I remember. I was
not
there.
Not him.
Oh.
No, it was a different Robbie. He was on limbs, but he was a similar position as me. Like he wanted to code, and they put him on a limbs project, and he crashed out pretty good too on Courtney. So I remember redhead Robbie. He crashed out. I was there when he crashed out. I was there when they walked him out. Yeah.
RSI was wild.
Yeah. So
hey,
for y'all,
but look, Trev,
that's how me and what
you don't forget the pizza parties though. They gave y'all pizza parties.
No, or the victory cake.
Oh, that's not.
Oh man, man, oh
That's gonna
man.
have to
So
be
yeah, I
that's gonna have to
met.
be a topic on success, bro. Like we're gonna
We should we should maybe do an episode on like previous jobs
yeah.
and like some of the fallacies or something like that. But I don't know
Yeah.
if we get in trouble name dropping companies. I'm not sure.
I mean, it is what it is at this point. Hey, look, we here now.
But facts. But to fill y'all in, that's where I met Hollywood, and that's how he became my mentor. That's how I got into .NET development. But uh, anyway, do you remember Don Hollywood from off the Limbs team?
Nah, I remember all the
Okay,
people
all
over
right.
there.
He was the second older guy next to John Kloss. But anyway, one time I was talking with Don. They had an interview, and him and John they go to the interview. Don comes back and he's like, yeah, this guy, he was real professional, but he just kind of he was like he didn't really look put together, right? But he didn't give any like hardcore details. And then he started saying like the guy had a lot of hair, and he was like he needs to have like a clean look, get a haircut, things like that. So I do not know what ethnicity this guy was. Don never really he never revealed that. But based on the way he was talking, I kind of got the impression that he might have been a person of color. And I feel like that goes back to, these higher standards for us, because it's like, wow, just because he had longer hair, is that a problem? Just because it looks different than maybe what you're used to seeing, because probably in your circle of people, your circle of influence, everybody might have either like a lower cut, or maybe they have long hair but it's slicked back and maybe it's of a different texture. But maybe because this person came in and maybe they had braids or dreads, maybe a mini fro or something like that, maybe even a fro, but as long as it's very neat, like to me that's not a problem, but obviously it wasn't working for Don. And of course that guy ended up not getting hired, right? So I feel like that goes back to those are one of the tangible examples of like, for us, like expectations have to be higher to where we even have to like watch what our hair looks like, like for certain employers it's a problem, versus people of other ethnicities, where they have certain textures with their hair, like they just give it two combs, walk in there, and they're good to go.
Yeah, I agree with you. Part of the story behind my locks, right, is part of that, right? I wanted to be able to show that, hey, professionalism looks different for different people. It doesn't all look one way. And let me brag on a company real quick. So I think most companies actually fall short in their hiring practices. Definitely, that's an instance of one. But I want to brag on Amazon. I used to work at Amazon for a few years, AWS in security. And their hiring practices, I will say, to me, are some of the best hiring practices. And I think they are the model behind the hiring practices. The reason why I say that is because you are interviewed by at least 5 people, 4 to 5 people. And they are very, very intentional about making sure that those people that you are interviewing with are of a diverse set of skills and looks and ethnicities and gender, right? The reason why that's
Oh, that's
important
awesome.
is because I can view you one way and a white male can view you a different way and a white female can view you a different way. And you all come into these rooms and making sure that you all are focusing on the facts and not just how you were perceived in that interview.
Yeah.
Right. Because I could
Yeah.
come off as, aggressive, cocky, confident, timid, like various different ways, right, to different people. And so they do a very, very good job, in my opinion, of really, really getting diverse sets of groups of people in those rooms and having tough conversations. Like these are tough conversations, too. These are not just, oh, well, they fit in. That's not going to fly. Right. Like if you say
Yeah.
somebody fits in, they're going to ask you to explain what you mean by fitting in, because I may fit into some groups and not others, right, and vice versa. So I do really like their hiring practice, but that's an example. To your point, that's an example from RSI or wherever it was that, hey, you don't have the right people in the room, or you don't have enough people in the room.
Bingo, enough people in the room. And a sidebar really quick. I really, really, really want to see more black people in tech because of and I thought about this because you talked about how good AWS's interview practices are, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, but do you know if there were a healthy amount of black people in on interview panels?
That's a good question. I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't know
yeah.
the diverse set. When I was there, it typically was just me, right, which is
Yeah.
fairly normal.
Right. Right.
Uh,
Right.
but I do know that because I could see the interview loops and I could see the people that were on there, I do know that it was not all white males, right? That for
That's
a
awesome.
fact.
That's awesome. Yeah.
It was a good group of women that was there as well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. And that's one thing that I feel like I'm seeing more and more uh selection of at least white women. Like so the last company I was at, not my current, but Wex, the CEO was a white woman. They promoted a white woman to engineering manager, which was awesome. Um, I think now I'm currently looking at this one place, and the VP is a female, so that's awesome. So I feel like I'm seeing more representation, at least from the white female side, but I definitely want to see more black people in tech because, to your point, Hollywood, and I've experienced that as well. My time at Wex, where I'm at currently, where I've been at in the past, like it's just not a lot of us in those spaces. So and that's part of the reason why we did this podcast, right? To hopefully try to create some noise and disruption and get some more of us in that space, man.
Oh, oh.
So, all right, cool. So, kind of moving on here. I have a quick little stat that I want to bring up really quick. So, and then we'll kind of go into some projects. So, I just went online and researched, and I was like, how often do like startups fail? You know, to try to reflect like how often does this happen where people have like an idea or they work on a project and it falls through. So I found this little stat, and it says up to 90% of startups fail. Across almost all industries, the average failure rate for year one is 10%. But listen to this. However, in years 2 through 5, a staggering 70% of new businesses will fail. So that was just a little stat I wanted to throw out there just to show like it happens a lot, bro, where people try to work on a project and it just falls through, man. And I think it's for a myriad of reasons, man. And then the big the big thing, I don't know if this is gonna get your blood boiling, but I wanted to kind of talk about an experience we had, which is Coder Dojo. So I'll fill the watchers in real quick. So, oh, what year was that, man? When we did Coder, was that 2018? 20?
I don't remember the year. I can tell you what I do remember. Whatever year it was, I only had a mattress and it was on the floor. I didn't even have a headboard. So I don't remember where I was,
but you were in Destin.
I think I was in
Destin,
Portland.
right?
I think I was in Portland.
Oh wow. So that had to
Maybe.
be like 2018, 2019, maybe.
2019, 2020, somewhere around there, I believe.
Okay. All right. Well, anyway, so we have a friend of ours. His name is Josh. Hopefully, we'll have him on here at some point in the near future. He also works in tech. Very bright guy. Also very charismatic. But Josh basically came to Hollywood, where someone had reached out to him about building out this app for it was a nonprofit, right? Coder Dojo.
Yeah.
So basically, Coder Dojo, my understanding is, I don't know if they're still out there today, but my understanding is they basically were a nonprofit where they would teach younger people how to code. And so they approached Josh about building out this app. So they wanted a website, and then they also wanted a portal where they could log in and the students could submit their assignments. They could look at the assignments, and they could have kind of this traditional teaching workflow, if you will. And so Josh hit up Hollywood. Hollywood hit me up. So all three of us, we kind of, had a little chat. We were like, all right, cool, boom, boom, boom. We're going to work on this project. Well, ended up falling through. And that was super it was super disappointing for me because that was the first side project I ever worked on where someone was like asking for what we were working on. Typically, you have a good idea or maybe you have a problem that you run into and you're like, oh, light bulb goes off and you're like, I could build something to solve this problem. Or maybe you just have a cool idea and you just want to dabble with some technology. So you're like, oh, cool, I'm going to just build this app. This was the first time where someone was coming to us and saying, hey, we need this. Can you guys do it? So when it fell through, I was like, man, that really was heartbreaking because I was like, dang, man, like that would have looked good on my resume. You know what I'm saying? And then if it would have kept going, you could still go back to it today and just be like, man, look at that. We built that. They're still using it. You know what I'm saying? Maybe you down the road, you enhance it. But it fell through, man. It fell through. So I wanted to kind of reflect on that project for a little bit, man, and ask what happened. Why do we think it failed?
So I have strong opinions about that, but I think that the reason why it failed was lack of communication from both sides, right? I'll take some ownership, right, from our side and say, hey, we probably could have, not probably, we could have communicated better, right? I mean, we were younger, and the more I think about it, I think it was actually 2018, somewhere around there, because I think we were just like, we were young, right? Like, I mean, a lot younger than we are. And so, you kind of mature, obviously, over time, right? At least hopefully you do. And can kind of reflect back on moments. But holistically looking at it, I think that communication was just not great from both sides. It really started with that they wanted us to do I thought it was the front end portion, right? Where it was the whole thing. It was the whole thing.
It was the whole thing.
Yeah,
they wanted a website. Like,
they wanted a website.
That was kind of more of I think the website was supposed to be more static, if you will. But the web app was like full stack.
Yeah. And so the thing about that is I didn't personally own the communication chain. Like Josh owned the communication chain with that person. They had a relationship and things like that. And knowing Josh how I know him, I guarantee you he communicated out like, hey, this is what we're doing. This is what we're building and whatever. And if I'm not mistaken, I do remember that there were sometimes I reach out to Josh like, hey, what's going on? Like, can we demo this? Can we get some feedback, et cetera, et cetera? It's like, I can't even get in touch with that person. I can't get in touch with that person. And so lo and behold, after we get somewhat done, right? Because at some point you need guidance, right? You need
right.
Your favorite phrase. What are the requirements, right? So we had some general idea of the requirements, but like, is this going down the path that you expected to go down? Because we may need to switch it up, or we may need to build things differently. And we never really heard back from them. And then by the time that we did, I think I had taken over the direct communication chain with her. Like I was able to just talk one-on-one or whatever for various reasons. And then I'll never forget, it was the meeting. The meeting where it just kind of just all ended, right? I think it was, we all want to call. I know at least me and Josh want to call, but I think we all want to call. And they were like,
I think so,
hey, they were like, hey, so we work with this other company to build the portal back end. Can you all just work on the front end and then wire it up to the back end? Now, I can't really I don't have enough time to articulate how complex something like that may or may not be. But what I can tell you is that was not what was on the table. Remember this, all this has been done for free. Like we're not getting paid for any of this, right? And that's fine. We knew that up front, so I'm not using that as an excuse. But what we agreed upon was not what we agreed upon. So now you're asking us to go do a lot more work and in-depth research on how hooking up two different two different systems and make it all one experience. And I remember her response, because I think I don't know how I reacted on the call. I'm pretty sure it was very direct though. And I'll never forget her response to whatever I had said. She said, well, I think she said like Dell or Google does it or something like that. And in my head, the only thing I saw was, we're not Google. Like we're whoever she compared us to, that's not who we are. Not that we can do it. Again, just not that we can do it. We were doing it for free. You would have to go pay the people that you're talking about or you're comparing us to. You're not paying us to do this. And so that kind of fizzled out. So I would say, to summarize it, I think communication was poor on both sides, but I do think that obviously biased. It wasn't most of our communication.
Yeah, yeah. I completely agree with that. Like, I think ultimately, like they kind of they, I mean they slighted us, right? Like they kind of cut our legs from underneath us. I don't really know why, in reflection, why they even went off and did that. Like, do you remember if she explained why they even did that?
I don't know. I have a theory though. I think they were working with multiple people, multiple groups of people, and so potentially what they saw was, hey, they saw our front end work because remember we did both. They saw our front end work, said, hey,
Yep.
that's cool, we like that, but we like this back end portal that this other team has done, and we're going to try to
Yeah.
see if we can maneuver our way in here and say, hey, let's just hook up both systems versus, hey, just being straight out honest with us. Hey, we actually like what they did better, and we're going to go with them, right?
Yeah, yeah. And see that wound up in a lot of wasted time. I think that was a
Oh,
big thing, at least for me. Like, I was like, wow. I'm like, so whoa, whoa, whoa. So you're basically asking us to just toss out all this stuff we did. Like, I don't know if you remember, but I wrote all of the authentication and the authorization. Like, and I mean, this was before, now the recommendation is like, oh, you go with a provider like Auth or Clerk or whatever. But this was back when, man, you were just hand rolling things. So like I'm just using all like straight .NET, whatever they offer.
oh,
So I'm like, man, that was a lot. That was a lot of code, a lot of logic a lot of love I put into that. You know what I'm saying? And don't get it wrong. Like, I'm not the type of engineer that handcuffs myself to some code. Like I believe strongly in, like, hey, let's improve where we can improve, and if something isn't the right solution, let's get rid of it. But
yeah.
at the end of the day, it's a lot of wasted time. You know what I'm saying? And at what point do you say, okay, like you said, we're doing this for free, and now I'm at a loss on my time. So we're really in the red. We're really in the red. So
Yeah, and
yeah, yeah.
and how I
Go
frame
ahead.
how I frame like loss of time and a waste of time for me, because even if I'm doing projects right, I can, and I think you're gonna get to this, but we can learn something from them. I can actually honestly say, truly, hand on the Bible, I learned nothing new out of doing Coder Jojo, and that was the biggest waste of time for me. And because there are a lot of
Yeah.
projects I actually learned a lot from, but Coder Jojo,
Yeah, yeah, and so, like, and now I'm going on a tangent here a little bit, but I think it also translates even to the industry, like even outside of just like side projects, right? Like, even in your like day to day work, how many times is time lost behind situations where stakeholders are just not clear, breakdown on communication, and I'm gonna try to I'm gonna try to say this without people catching strays, but um, line certain context being lost between stakeholder and product communication. Like, stakeholders say A, product interprets that as B, product comes to tech with C, and then the reality is what they really need is D. So between all of that, we really have not even identified what they really need. And now you build something, similar situation. Oh, hey, here you go. And they're like, this isn't what we need. Oh, okay.
yeah.
So once again, now I gotta go toss this out.
Yeah, what if I threw this at you? What if I say uh there's not enough wasted time that actually happens in the field? And what I mean by that is, you just described, hey, we take this and we toss it out. How many times though do companies say we're not going to toss it out? We're just going to build upon something that we don't need and build something quote unquote better. But we all know how that all turns out. It actually turns out worse. Now
Yep.
that's really a lot of
Yep.
wasted time because
Yep.
you're building on top of
Yep.
tech debt. You're building on top of really trash to try to get
Yep.
something valuable
Yep.
out of it.
Yep. So you bring up a great point, and I'm actually now I'm really about to go off subject here a little bit, because at my current job, I actually just ran into this. So we have this consultant where, or Lord, we have this consultant. We have this client where they basically brought to us like this code base. It was bad, and they had two different UI code bases, and they were like, "Hey, can you guys consolidate it into one?" Now the code was already a big mess, right? Like, and they told us like openly, they were like, "Hey, we generated this using AI." They're not tech people, So they generated this thing, but they're actually making revenue, So right off the bat, I'm like, okay, cool. I'm not about to sit here and try to consolidate this. We're just gonna build it from the ground up, Mind you, at this time, I'm new, so I don't have any idea of like what the funding is, what our time frame is roughly. I don't have any of that. But basically, they bring me in. They're like, hey, we don't have a whole lot of UI experience. You do. Lead us to the promised land. So I'm like, okay, bet. I'm like, I'm gonna do some mock-ups, and they're like, that's great. So I'm not a Figma type of guy, because I don't like the concept of like dealing with these boxes and all this, right? I'm like, it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier if I just code it up. I coded up this UI, but once again, it's a mock-up. So I code up these mock-ups. I show them to everybody. They're like, yeah, that's great. So then I get pulled onto another project briefly. There's another person that was slotted for that project. So I go off work on this other thing briefly. I come back, Hollywood. They done took the stuff I did for the mock-ups. That's production code now. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, that was not I literally had in the mock-up, like I had put like an element that said for prototype purposes only. Bro, they literally had that in the environment. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, that was not the intention.
Yeah.
So guess what? So now we rolling with what I did from the first day, and I'm like, all right, I guess this is what it is, Yep.
Then somebody's going to take that, right? Something doesn't work on it, and they're going to say, okay, well, let me build on top of this rather than, again, taking a step back and let's build something new. Like, 'cause people, like companies want to quote unquote move fast, right? And I don't believe that you can move fast and have quality software. I just want to be clear. I'm not saying you have to move slow, but I don't think you can just move fast and be like, hey, we need to move fast and we need quality. Yeah. The reason why I don't believe that is because I don't believe companies actually invest in the idea. Because if they did, they would bring more people in to quote unquote move fast and improve the quality. But not to go on that tangent. But I always tell my my people this is that or my teams is that I am more focused on doing the right work and not saving work, right? Like if we built something and that's not what is needed and we need to go back and redo it, like let's have that conversation of let's get rid of this application. Let's go back and build it from the ground up. Let's take a step back and build it from the ground up. And then once we build it the right way, we can move faster later because we can improve upon the right stuff. You know how difficult it is to improve on bad code? Like that is absolutely,
yes.
I mean, it brings so much risk too, because a lot of bad code is not real documented, right? And even if, code will be self-documenting, some people self-documenting, you look at it like, how'd you even document this? Like you wrote this, you documented it,
right?
And you kept it. Like, I don't understand these things, right? Like, like you didn't read what you wrote. Like, it's crazy.
So I remember this. I won't say quote per se, but Matt Roberts, your mentor, actually kind of taught me this. I kind of augmented what he said, but I have this thing that sticks with me, which is quality, speed, and budget. You can only have two. You're not going to get all three. And I feel like senior leaders, that's what they try to tout, right? Especially now with like this AI hype, like they try to say, oh, you should be able to be 150% to 200% productive. Like you should be able to 1x, 2x your productivity. And I'm just like, that's not reality. So I hold strong to that sentiment, which is speed, quality, and budget. Pick 2 out of the 3. We can be fast and we can get it done under budget, but the quality is not going to be there.
Yeah.
Man, that's just.
I think if people were honest, though, I think if they had to sacrifice something, they would sacrifice quality. Right? Like if you were to ask a leader to sacrifice something, they're going to sacrifice. They might not say it, right?
They're not going to say it. They're not going to say it, right? But in reality, that's sacrificing quality. Because their whole thing is, guess what? I don't see the code. I see the product, you know,
Mhm.
and so I care about the product. And guess what? If something happens with the product, we're just gonna call you late at night, and you're gonna get up because we pay you. So you're gonna get up and you're gonna
Facts.
fix it.
Yep. And I
That's just
think
reality.
part of the reason too, right, is that it's very difficult to correlate quality to revenue. So if you can
Facts,
always
facts.
say, hey, you can do numbers with budget. You can do numbers with actually having a product out there. Say, hey, I got this product out there, no matter the quality, and it's bringing in some type of
Mm-hmm.
revenue. But you can't go and say, well, if I improve the quality to, let's say, 90% or something like that, how much more revenue is that going to generate? It's very difficult to ascertain. So,
Yeah. 100%. And maybe when we do an episode on AI, because y'all we do have some stuff slotted for that. But maybe when we talk about that, I would love to dive into like, do we feel like in the future quality isn't even a thing? Like I mean, you gotta think about it, Hollywood. We 10, 15 years in the game, man. Like are the next wave of engineers, are they going to be kind of mentored to think in more of a mindset that quality doesn't matter that much? You know what I'm saying? Especially, I mean, you know, yes, I think AI will continue to improve, 100%. Um, but as AI writes more and more code, and people aren't doing as much of like hand rolling things, like, do you even care? I mean, you're not looking at what code is being produced.
yeah, I would also ask this question, right? Has quality ever mattered? If you think about all the code bases you've been in, has quality ever really mattered?
That's actually a good question, man. That's a brilliant question. How many? I mean, think about it. I mean, I already know what you're gonna say, but every project we've been involved in over our career, it always comes down to that. It always comes down to a trade off discussion. Do you want me to do this right, or do you want me to just get it done?
Nope. Nope.
Right.
Nope.
So getting back on topic here, because I do want to focus on the project failures. One thing I do remember that we did that was a misstep on our part. Do you remember when we initially implemented Dapper?
Oh yeah.
So for the people watching, listening that don't know, Dapper is a micro object relational mapper. If you're familiar with databases, then there are approaches where you can bring in code that will map a class to a table in your database. And traditionally, they're called entities. So at first, we pulled in Dapper because Dapper is lightweight. It's micro ORM. You know, we figured, oh, this will be faster, you know, more efficient. But I vividly remember Hollywood was having to kind of write all of this logic to get the data, you know, and kind of writing all these ways to do these joins and get this data back and present it to the front end in an easy way. And so that ended up taking a lot of his capacity, right? And so eventually, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Hollywood, we ripped Dapper out and we just put in Entity Framework, just because we wanted to kind of get to an MVP state, right? Or what? Am I missing
I'm
something
not.
there?
I'm not sure. I don't think we ever. I don't think we ever ripped it out. I think when we were doing it, EF Core. Remember, we were using .NET Core, and .NET Core was really in like its infancy, if I can say. Like,
Yep.
I think it was at
Yep.
2.1 or 3.1 or something like that. It was still fairly like young. And then we're kind of talking very technical. So .NET is a whole framework. We use C Sharp, which is a programming language, and they have .NET's been around for a good while, and they have this thing that they call the full framework, which is .NET 4 or 4.6 or whatever was the latest at that time. But they were
Yep.
rewriting their whole .NET
Yep.
framework, making it open source and everything like that, making it cross-platform as well, so it works on not just Windows machines but Linux machines. And so
Yep.
they had to be at 2.1 or like 3.0 when we were using it. And EF Core, I think this was at least my first EL project outside of EF6 from the full framework. And the way I would describe the differences between EF6 and EF Core was EF6 let you make all the mistakes you wanted to make. It would let you do bad design and things like that. So if you started with that, which I did, and I got all my learnings from that, if I go into EF Core and I can't do some of the things I think I can do, right? It's all client side evaluation, all this other stuff, right? It's just terrible. So I don't think we ever ripped EF Core out. I think we did stick with Dapper, but at that point the project was kind of coming to an end too.
Yeah. I think in hindsight, maybe we would have. Do you think we would have moved a little quicker had we just gone with EF Core?
Oh yeah, 100%. I'm not a SQL guy. Like I shouldn't be.
I mean, I will say, man, I would say I was actually pretty impressed with how some of the queries you were writing, because I mean, me kind of focusing on other things, like I was just able to call your method, so I was like, oh, this is awesome. You know, you were doing all the legwork.
And see, the thing about it is, right, it was fast though. Right, Dapper is fast. I mean, it's basically just SQL, right? Like it don't have all the baggage that comes with Entity Framework or whatever. So that was my whole thing. You got to make this fast. You got to make this fast. And again, I've matured over time, so I've kind of learned that there needs to be trade offs. But me, I'm like, I want everything, right? Because you were talking about Matt. He was like, you have 2 of the 3. Hey, I want it all, right? And so that's that immaturity coming in, where it's like, man, I want to be fast. I wanted to be within our time frame. I wanted to be good quality and just trying to accomplish all that. Just, I mean, it does take a lot of time.
Yeah, 100%. So okay, all right. Moving on from Coder Dojo, I wanted to talk about another failed project, because we're talking about projects that we've been involved with, but I also kind of wanted to take it to an enterprise scale, right? To show like, hey, it's not just the regular people out here failing either, So did some research, and before I even go into this article that I found, I'm gonna ask you, Hollywood, have you ever heard of Google Wave? Have you ever even heard of it in the past?
Nope, not until you brought it up a few days ago.
Me either. I was literally like, man, what would be cool to like see a use case of like another failed project, and then I'm like, Google Wave, never even heard about it. So I found this article where it talks about Google Wave, and basically Google Wave was essentially, if I had to think of kind of a competitor of what Google Wave would be, Slack. So it was supposed to be like a centralized workspace platform, where you could collaborate. Let's see here. These are some of the key features in this article. Wiki style functionality. While this product was supposed to replace your regular email, it had an interesting feature that all users added to the Wave would be able to edit that document. So that was one key feature. Drag and drop file uploads. Instead of having to search for a file, attach it separately, and then send your email, you could easily add files to your conversation just by dropping them where they were needed. Another key feature, playback. One of the worst things about being added to an email thread late is that you miss out on all of the previous conversations. With Google Wave, you can quickly scroll back up and see how the entire discussion progressed, making it easy to catch up on anything you missed. Now, for context, Google Wave was supposed to be released in 2009. So I do need to add that context, because some of you guys are probably listening to me and saying drag and drop file upload, like that's easy, right? But this was 09. So times were different. I don't even know if Slack existed back then.
I think so.
Yeah, because man, I have no idea. Or even if Google Chat did exist, I'm sure it wasn't what it is today with this capability.
I don't even think that was around. That's a good question. We should probably go look that up.
I know we should look that up. But anyway, so it was supposed to be this big thing, and basically it completely flopped. And going through this article, there were some assumptions that were made that led to the downfall of Google Wave, and maybe you'll resonate with some of these. So one bad assumption that they made was Wave was a finished product at the time of its release. It was always an R&D project. Wave was a beta release in the word's true sense, not an almost finished product with beta put on it in excess of caution. Another failed assumption is users would adopt Wave quickly. Once new users gained access to the platform, the enthusiasm faded quickly and was replaced by confusion. Um, Another failed assumption, it would be easy to add users to Wave. This was one of the most flawed concepts of the whole design. For a collaborative app to have trouble adding users is a serious problem. And I completely agree with that. The key point, though, out of this entire article that I want to call out is this one little blurb that was in the article, and it says this. One of the main problems with Wave was that hardly anyone knew what a wave was or what to do with it. With barely any introduction of wave concepts to the general public, next to no marketing and no specific commercial targeting, this product was practically set up for failure. Now, I'm going to say this. How many times have we worked on a project where we didn't do any validation, no marketing, no defining what your target audience is? You just hit the road running. You start coding, and in your mind, you're like, this is gonna blow up. This is gonna be awesome, man. I'm gonna have 100,000 users on this thing, and you put it out there. You don't even, and I'll be honest, like I've done this before. I don't even know how to market or do advertisement. I haven't even thought for that, haven't budgeted for it at all. You drop a link somewhere on social media, you try to hit up a couple people on Reddit, and you quickly find out nobody cares.
Yeah. That's true.
And it seems like that is exactly what happened with Google Wave. They basically built this thing without doing any work in front of it, and they fell on their faces.
Yeah, man, that's I'll say, man, big companies, they can afford to do that though. It's kind of like the modern content creation these days, right? Which is funny because we're actually in content creation. Whereas like you create content and you just put it out there, and then maybe it hits, maybe it doesn't. I almost kind of describe it like, kind of taking it to hip hop, right? The mixtapes. One of the things that somebody like, 50 Cent did very well was he put a lot of mixtapes out there, Lil Wayne the same way, right? And they hit on, and then next thing you know, boom, hey, I'm checking for other things. And so but big companies come bringing it back to that. I feel like they have the budget and they have the time to do it because they lost, obviously they invested money in it. And those people who worked on it, they probably learned a lot from it, by the way, but they got paid for that time versus us, like on the side, and we do stuff like that. Like we put it out there, hey, it doesn't catch on. That's a lot of time seeing that we just put into something that didn't really reward us, and financially, I would say, because a lot of things we do doesn't have to be rewarding financially, but I think big companies can do it. Oh, and let me give you a fact. So I just looked it up. Slack wasn't released until 2013.
Wow.
Yep.
So because we were you're right, because when we were at RSI, we didn't have Slack. We were on you remember we were on Yammer? You remember that? We were on Yammer and Google Chat. And that was back when it was called Hangouts.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? No, they had us on Yammer, bro. Wow. We're showing.
Hey, is Yammer still around? So Yammer, for those who don't know, Yammer was supposed to be like, or it's marketed as Twitter for work. That nobody ever used.
I didn't even know that. Yeah, man. After I left RSI, I've never gone anywhere, and they were like, "We use Yammer." Oh man, that was funny.
But that's interesting though
that late.
Yeah, 2013. So you talking about Google Wave came out. So if you really think about it, I guess the cost of innovation is apparently evident here, right? Because they came out with all these things that Slack, does very well, or at least did very well. We don't use that word, but it does very well. And so it's like, man, that's kind of crazy, right? Like maybe they released at the wrong time when the industry wasn't ready for it. That may require a use case analysis.
Oh, I know. Oh, we might be able to get into some use case analysis stuff on the podcast too, man. That would be dope, actually. Maybe we did like a walkthrough one, but whatever. I'm going off topic here. That brings up all right. I have a random question. Do you think it's just more cost effective? And I don't know the cost specifically. But do you think it's just easier for a company to go with Google Workspace. Because, and the reason I ask that is because I find that a lot of the companies I've been at, they use Google. You know, like when we were at RSI, when I was at Wix, Google Workspace. Do you guys use Google Workspace?
Yeah,
You
we've
guys
had
don't.
we've had two different experiences. Actually, RSI may have been the only company I worked at that used Google for their email.
Really?
Yeah, most of it are the rest of them have been Outlook.
Yeah, and see me, I'm actually not the biggest fan of Outlook, man. I honestly,
I'm not the biggest fan
I
of
know
emails
that
though. So
true story. So are you guys using like Teams,
yeah,
like for
yeah, yeah.
chats?
Teams, yeah.
Like, gotcha. Oh, in your defense, I will say, my current company, they use Outlook and Teams, but I mean they're Microsoft like all the way, like, I mean Azure, um all that stuff, man. So I thought that maybe they were a little biased. I'm not gonna lie.
No, if you think about it,
Maybe
though, I
I'm the
mean, like if
biased
you're the
one here.
company, you might be because the way I look at it is that I mean, Google do they have even a programming language? Yeah, I guess what Go is Go like still a
Go,
thing.
yeah, and
Oh, okay.
Go is fire in my opinion.
Yeah. So the reason why I bring it up is because like a lot of shops I work at or have worked at have been like .NET shops. Amazon being like a Java shop, I think for the most part. But outside that's been .NET. And if you think about Microsoft, the whole ecosystem of Microsoft just kind of
Yep.
synergizes fairly well. So with Google, I feel like Google's more of an outlier when it comes to like emails and workspace and things like that because that's kind of it, right? They don't own the OS. Like Microsoft owns the OS. And
Yeah.
in my opinion, the best browser out there right now is actually Microsoft Edge. This is not a paid advertisement. I don't really care. But I
Oh
do know
man, I don't know.
I do, I do know that Chrome was hogging so many resources, man. It just annoyed me one day because I'm writing code and taking all my resources. And like this is a bull, right? So I go and I was like, let me just open this up in an Edge, and I'm using Edge, and like the experience is nice. It actually synchronizes or synergizes with Teams very well. I'm like, I have really no reason to go back, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah. Man, that's very interesting. I still need to give it a chance. I will say I haven't really given Edge a fair shot. I got hooked on Chrome and I've been hooked ever since. So I need to take a step back, maybe take a look at Edge and see what you're talking about. See if the hype is real, man. See if the hype is real.
Yeah. When it first came out, it wasn't good, right? I think they were using their own drivers and things like that, but now they're based on Chromium, which Chrome is based on Chromium, right? And so now Microsoft adds their own little flavor to it and things like that. So that's my preference.
Okay. All right. Cool. Bet. One thing I did want to touch on really quick that you talked about is big companies have the budget to kind of make those failures, right? And so I kind of wanted to pick your brain and say like, have you ran into that before? Because I have, right? Where I've been, you know, either a part of a project or maybe I was on another project, but I knew a team that was working on a project, and the project just gets shelved. You know, it gets shelved, and people just kind of they do the Homer Simpson gif where they kind of like you kind of back into the bush and just act like it never happened. And to your point, it's kind of like they can afford to do that. So from a company standpoint, like it's not that deep, right? But I feel like when you're an IC and you're seeing that, especially as an engineer, like I imagine that can kind of grind your gears.
Yeah, I've actually never experienced it. I don't think that it would bother me. I actually think that I would embrace that, or embrace the opportunity to go out and build something that may or may not be adopted. That in my head is like, hey, I can build this to the standards that I have for myself and my team, versus being under some type of deadline or pressure to deliver something that is most definitely going to go out into production, right? Building a prototype, building a proof of concept. Hey, I embrace those opportunities. But what I have
Yeah.
experienced is more of changing priorities. That's what grinds my gears. It's like, hey, this is the high priority for this next 3 months. And then after 3 months, the priority has changed to something else. Now, this is not the next highest priority.
Yep.
Now it's this.
Yep.
Or you get multiple high priorities
Yep.
or they change the priorities during the priorities. That's what really grinds my.
Yeah. I have a saying which is if there are multiple high priorities, there are no high priorities.
There are no high priorities, bro. There are no high
Yeah,
priorities.
yeah. I
And they
will
get
say
frustrated
this
at you
though,
too.
man. Oh, I know. Especially like like program managers. I don't know if y'all have those, but I at Wix we have program managers, and in my opinion, like I have to kind of sit back and go, okay, what do you do? Because we're in these calls and basically you're just asking me questions and I'm not giving you the answers you're looking for. So, what do you do besides how me?
Yeah.
You
Yo.
know, hey, is what it is. I will say this though. As a rebuttal. I'm gonna move off of that, but I will say this as a rebuttal though. I do like I knew this guy and he had this term shelfware, and I will say I do not like the idea of like building shelfware. Like I don't enjoy being on a project where like it feels like I'm kind of in a desert and there are like tumbleweeds going by because nobody's really like talking about it, and you're just kind of looking around like is anyone interested in this? And like, because I enjoy building something that I know is gonna be of value, So like when I feel like I'm just building something and like you're just kind of looking around, nobody's really talking about it, or maybe you're working on something and people are talking about it, but then all of a sudden people are like, oh yeah, we're just gonna kind of move on, I'm kind of like, well, was this like I want to do something that's like of value.
Yeah, I guess my perspective is different because I feel like we've never ever gotten the credit as back end engineers, right? Because if you think about it,
Fair.
when they're trying to sell a product, they're only selling the front end, right? It has to look good, it has to fit a workflow. And so as the people who I feel like are the engines to the train, right? Nobody cares about the engine, right? Nobody looks at the engine, but the train is shiny. They're gonna navigate towards it. And so I don't think that I've ever been in a situation where we've ever gotten credit for the work that we've done. And I accepted it a while ago where it's like, hey, I'm not doing this for the credit. I'm doing this to get some value out of it for myself. And hopefully my team is getting some value out of the code that we write. Because a lot of the stuff that we write just for our viewers, you really never see. And we are very, very, very proud of, right? Like those people who built Chat GPT, you don't know the behind the scenes, right? You don't see none of that, but you just appreciate, that it gives me this information, it helps me do this job. And so I kind of have that mentality where, hey, we've never gotten it. I don't expect it. And as long as I get something out of it, I'm good.
And I can imagine working at a place like AWS, right? Like I can only imagine like the different systems and all the amount of data, like the volume of data being transferred between systems, and how are services communicating? How are you guys making sure that things are consistent or eventually consistent, whatever approach you guys are using? So to your point, when it comes to back end, that stuff, and people don't see that, right? But it's like extremely complex, dog. Like it's extremely complex. Okay, bet. So now we can kind of go into what are some things that we would do differently, whether it's Coder Dojo, whether it's a bigger company, that maybe made a mistake. What are some, like, in your mind, what are some things that you think anyone could do to try to be better next time, the next go around they work on a project?
So to answer your question, right, like going back to Matt Roberts, he taught me like two things that were very, very important. He taught me a lot, but those two things that I really, really gonna go back to. And the first thing is documentation, learning how to read documentation and understand it. Because I could go to him with questions, and I always went to him with questions, and he could obviously answer it. He would answer. He had a lot of patience, but he would also show me, hey, this is where it is in documentation. This is how you read it. This is how you study it. And so that's been very, very valuable. But the second thing that goes back to your question is he taught me to ask questions. He taught me about the 5 whys. and how important the firewalls were. And this was back in 2013, 14, maybe, I'm sorry, back 14, 15, somewhere around there. Before, Amazon CEO termed the coin YQ, have a high YQ. So I've been knowing about the firewalls for a long time. And so the way he described it to me, he told me this story. He said there was a daughter who was watching her mom cook a roast. And she noticed that she would cut the ends of her roast off before she put it in the pot. And so her daughter asked her, hey, why do you do this? And she didn't have an answer for her. So she said, the only thing I have for you is that my mom always did it. So she went back and she asked her mom. And her mom pretty much told her the same thing. Well, I did it because my mom did it. So they went back, asked her mom. And her mom said, baby, the only reason why I did it is because my pot was too small. Right. And so the moral of that story is sometimes we're out here doing a lot of things that we don't understand why we're doing it, and it doesn't make sense to do. So all these years, that mother's been wasting a good portion of her meat by cutting the ends off when she could have just really understood why it's important to cut those ends off and go forward from there. But I think we have that fault in a lot of our projects at work and on the side projects, which is we don't ask enough questions. And nobody should be offended by the question. There was this instance in this in the group chat that we talk about on Facebook, the Black Tech Network Facebook group.
Yes.
Where there was a question coming up about, hey, my manager, I asked them, why they made some changes to my code, and they didn't really explain why. They just went and did it. They didn't really respond, and they were looking for some advice. So, kind of summarize the advice I gave them was that. Keep asking questions and keep moving forward. If that manager doesn't have the time to explain to you or doesn't want to explain why they're making the changes that they're making, you shouldn't feel any type of way about it. That's on that manager. And I see it like this. If you can't explain what you do and why you do it or why you wrote something the way you wrote it, you shouldn't be able to do it. And that goes to all levels. This goes beyond like levels and titles and things like that. This sticks to we're talking about code here. This is software development. This is code. This is all that matters. It doesn't matter who wrote it. And so I think when you talk about what I would have done differently or what we could have done differently, I think asking more questions is always a good course of action.
Yeah. I think that's a great answer. One follow-up question I have is, how do you thrive, or maybe you don't thrive, but what do you do in an environment where maybe you ask a lot of questions, but you're met with a lot of pushback, right? So people start to view you as, oh, you're being the squeaky wheel, or, just, because I said so, I am the leader here. You're the worker bee. Just do what I say.
Yeah. How do I handle?
Without going
I
off.
don't. Man, that's a tough one because I experienced that currently, right? This is not a situation you asked me about that I have overcame. I would say my response has changed multiple times, kind of depending on how I approach the situation. But I stick to this principle. I still ask the question, right? Because they're important. At the end of the day, all that matters is work. Not really how you feel about it, how you feel about me. It's all about the work. What is, and we work in a fact-based field, right? If you do something a certain way, it will work. And if you don't do something a certain way, it will not work. We work in a fact-based field. Right. So if I'm asking you questions, I'm asking you questions to get to the fact of the matter. I don't need a theory. Right. I don't need to know how you feel about it. I just need an answer. I need to understand why the decision was made, how it was made, or why the approach is why the approach. And if you tell me the why, if I have a better understanding, and as I mentioned before, the context matters, and I get more of the context, I can actually build a better product for you than you giving me surface level information and just expecting me to go with that.
Yeah. You're preaching to the choir. Hopefully, the listeners out there, someone who's potentially dealing with that, maybe that they have a good takeaway from that.
Yeah.
One thing that I see often, because I've I watch these YouTube videos on these people that have started these SaaS businesses, and one thing they really harp on a lot is validating your idea. What are your thoughts on that? Because I feel like I have a middle of the ground opinion. Like I feel like absolutely like validate the idea, make sure like, hey, is this something that people can actually use and benefit from if that's your goal, right? Like if your goal is, hey, I'm just trying to build software and I'm just trying to learn about this technology, I say you just hit the ground running because even if it doesn't work out, like there was still value on your end from it, right? But if you are truly trying to build something that, like, I want this to be a successful thing that makes money, 100%. Like I'm like, yeah, validate, but I also feel like at some point, you know, I do feel like you have to get something into users' hands. So what are your thoughts on when people really harp on validating an idea?
And what do they mean by validate?
So I've seen a couple different approaches. Um, I would say the top two or three. One to me is almost, well, I don't even know how valid that is because one approach I've seen is people say, "Oh, reach out to your network," and I'm like, "All right, well, I mean, a lot. Everybody has a different kind of network. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
if you're talking to someone, 5 years of experience, maybe they've worked at smaller companies. Like, I mean, depending on their network, like they might be talking to people that don't care, and they ask them the question, they're like, man, I don't have that domain knowledge to confidently answer if I would use your app. I wouldn't be a user of it. Um, so that's one thing I've seen. Another thing I've seen is building landing pages where you kind of just express the idea and then you try to get people to sign up and then you basically market or advertise that. So that way you can see if you can get interested people before you start to build. And another thing I've seen too is kind of building out some sort of wireframe or some sort of like very lightweight workflow where you can like show what the workflow would be, but it's not a full-fledged application. And then taking that and then trying to pub that out.
Gotcha. Ooh, that's a tough one, man. Because at the end of the day, everything you saying right costs time. It may not cost money, but
Right.
it costs some level of time.
Right.
I
Right.
I think what I do if I'm going into a side project, I probably do one or two things. I'm either just gonna hit the ground running, just go dive into it and get to a point where I've convinced myself that this is not a good idea or it's not worth it. Or I'm gonna run it by people like you and other people. Like, hey, what do you think about this? Like, you think this would catch on? Or what about this idea and kind of validate it that way? But as far as kind of going out there and putting it out there and saying, hey, can I get you all's opinion on this and kind of get a group of following and then going out there and building something? I don't think that would be my approach. Maybe that should be because I don't have anything that's making money right now. So maybe
Yeah.
I need to change up my strategy. But for now, that's not
Yeah.
really something I think I would do. That'd be my approach.
Yeah, yeah. And I think too, man, like I mean, we're passionate about technology and coding. So I think for us it's always like even if it flops, I still got something out of it, right? Like
Facts.
I was able to like work with these technologies, work with this tooling, and now and I candidly speaking, I'm just gonna say this, I'm gonna put it on my resume. Like, I'm gonna be like, oh yeah, I got experience with this. I did this at work.
Facts.
but
Facts.
we've done it to the point where I can speak to it. So
Yep.
guess what? The
Exactly.
story might not be true, but like you said, we work in a fact-based industry. So I'm just spit the facts to you. You know what I'm saying? So at that point, does the story matter that much?
That's fact. So that actually brings up a good point because I worked on side projects where I built like multiple microservices, right? This whole domain driven
Yep.
architecture and things like that.
Yep.
Built this whole system, right? It was actually called the Black Excellence Project. It was kind of supposed to follow off Facebook and things like that. The whole bunch of microservices
Yeah.
behind it. very difficult to maintain by one person, just to be very, very clear.
Yeah.
But before I've done that, I've never actually worked on microservices. And
Yeah.
so when I got into interviews at like Amazon and at the company I currently work with now, I could speak towards microservices because I actually did it. I never did it professionally, but I
Yeah.
actually did it. And I
Yeah.
think this is an important detail to kind of note to people who are going out there and trying to get into this field and saying, hey, well, I don't actually have the experience. Said before, you worked in a fact-based industry. So you may not have the experience professionally or in a corporate way. But if you put this work in on the side and you can speak to it, I've never, ever thought that I have an idea where I would go and say, hey, this person, I'm interviewing this person and they know exactly what I need them to know, but I can't hire you because you don't have a degree. I don't think that would ever be my approach. And I don't think that would be most people's approaches to hiring talent.
Facts.
The talent's the talent.
Facts. And you bring up a great point because I actually tell people that today. Like for example, my barber, he's actually trying to get. Now he's not trying to get into coding per se. He's trying to get more into cybersecurity, I believe. But we had a similar conversation where I was telling him, I was like, you don't need a degree, man. You don't need a degree. Like, sure, certs. Go get your certs. But once you get your certs, man, and granted, I don't know as much about cybersecurity, so let me also add that context. But I'm not sure if there's a way that you can participate in some sort of side project or something, or kind of just build up your skills on the side in such a way that you can land an interview because you have that skill set despite you not having a degree. And I'm also a proponent of, look, now, no, I'm not saying you should just go and just lie to the 10th degree on your resume. I'm not saying, if you haven't met, I don't know, if you haven't met Jay-Z, don't put on your resume, oh, I met Jay-Z. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is, I mean, look, man, and I'm sure a lot of people listening or watching, you guys have probably done it as well, where you have, you laid it on thick in your resume. And that's what I'm saying. Like, if you've done it on the side, lay it on thick according to whatever the job is asking for. And as long as you can confidently speak to what they're asking you about, I don't think it really matters, And I think if you were to tell your job down the line after you're hired, hey, I lied about da 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 da, they'll be like, we don't care. You knew the stuff. You knew the technologies. You knew the domain. Now I'm not saying just don't go and tell your job that, but I'm just saying.
Hey, experience is experience, right? Like at the end of the day, experience is experience, and you should get credit for all the experience, no matter how you got it. And to be perfectly honest, none of the school experience that you get is going to be as valuable as the experience that you're going to get from actually doing the work. So,
that's a quote right there, man. That's a quote.
book it.
So okay, cool. Yeah. Hey, that's gotta be a real, man. But so with all that being said, I'm gonna wrap us up here. So kind of taking us to our takeaways. A few quick lessons that I have here. Number one, you're not behind, you're learning. So whatever it is, whether you're dealing, whether you just came up off a project that failed, maybe you're dealing with something at work where you feel like, man, I'm just not picking this up. Maybe you run into a hard technical problem. I had that happen recently, and you just feel like you're stumped in the moment. You're not behind. You're learning. Shiny ideas fade. Pick something you care about. Solve a problem. Don't create a solution. So, number one, make sure it's something that you care about, you're passionate about. We're passionate about coding. So for us, when we work on something, whether it takes off to the moon, whether nobody ever uses it, we feel rewarded because we love coding, So make sure whatever you're doing, you care about it. If you want to make money, make sure you're solving a problem, not creating a solution that nobody cares about. And then lastly, the process is the product when you're learning. That workflow you're dealing with, and you're constantly, okay, all right, it goes like this, but we need to make it like da 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 da. And you're constantly like changing things and manipulating how maybe the UI works, or maybe what the process is, or when a user might get a notification. That's all the product, and the process that you're going through is developing that product. And what's the old saying, Hollywood, eat your own dog food. So, when you create when you create that product, make sure that you're testing it, that you're using it. Like, it doesn't make sense to put something out there in the world if you don't even know it, you can't speak to it, you can't explain it. And even beyond just a side project, when you're at work, that's something Hollywood actually taught me. Like, even in your job, like, you need to know what you're working on. You need to be able to speak to the code that you're writing. You need to be able to speak to the application that you're maintaining, and know its pitfalls, know the tech debt, know the highs, the lows, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And my last takeaway is what the title said. Failure is not final. You messed up, it's all good. Get down 7 times, get back up again. So, fun question to close here. Hollywood, if your past self came to you, pitching to you working on Coder Dojo today, what advice would you give them if they were approached by someone else about working on Coder Dojo?
My advice would be to, one, make sure you have a direct line of communication. Make sure you have a consistent line of communication. Make sure you agree on a RACI model, roles and responsibilities, basically, or who owns what, who needs to be aware of what, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's my biggest thing. I would keep the communication very, very frequent, very, very open, and very, very clear. And I think if you do that, then you all will land somewhere. It may not be where you want to land, but we will land somewhere where we are aligned with, versus we're landing in one place that we viewed it as unfair, and I'm pretty sure that they viewed it as unfair as well.
I've seen the powerful fall when the people work together as one. I need you to live or let die. Hold your head high. I'm by your side till it's one. Together we can hold